भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयन्ति। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भक्तिनैष्ठिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Questions by Vidura, text number 42 onwards. So Vidurji is further asking Uddhava, Soham Harir Martya Vidambanena Drisha Nrinam Chalayatu Vidhatu Nanyupalakshya Padvim Prasada Charami Pashyan Gat Vismayo Atra. I'm not astonished at this, having traveled over the world without being seen by others. The activities of the personality of Godhead, which are like those of a man in this mortal world, are bewildering to others. But I know of his greatness by his grace, and thus I'm happy in all respects. So he's saying, I'm not astonished at this. Like, okay, last shloka he talked about his brother Dhritarashtra, and before that he asked about as the welfare about everybody in Dwarka, in Hastinapur, among the Pandavas. Now he's talking about Krishna. Although he was the brother of Dhritarashtra, Vidura was completely different. By the grace of Lord Krishna, he was not foolish like his brother, and thus his brother's association could not influence him. Dhritarashtra and his materialistic sons wanted to falsely lord it over the world by dint of their own strength. And the Lord encouraged them in this, and thus they became more and more bewildered. But Vidura wanted to achieve sincere devotional service of the Lord, and therefore became his soul absolutely surrendered to the absolute personality of Godhead. He could realize this in the progress of his pilgrim's journey, and thus he was freed from all doubts. He was not at all sorry to be bereft of his earth and home, because he now had experienced the dependence on the mercy of the Lord is a greater freedom than so-called freedom at home. A person should not be in the renounced order of life unless he is firmly convinced of being protected by the Lord. This stage of life is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Abhyam Sattva Sanshuddhi. Okay, so far what we have studied. So although he was brother of Dhritarashtra, Vidura was completely different. He could not be influenced by his brother's association. So that's how he was fixed up in his duties towards Krishna, towards his kingdom, towards Pandavas, that he could not be influenced by Dhritarashtra or his sons. So that's how one should be fixed up. That even in the middle of all sorts of materialistic people, one should not get swayed. That's a level. That's a level of nishtha. Actually, we should achieve. From nishtha, then we go to ruchi, asakti, bhav, prem, etc. But that nishtha means fixed faith, steady faith. That's what we have to achieve. And Vidura, he was at that position. So he could not be influenced by Dhritarashtra or living in the kingdom while acting as the prime minister of the kingdom and with so much of politics going on around him. He did not get affected. He did not get swayed from his devotion service. So that's what we have to also get into. It's not that you will always be associated with Paramhamsas. Not going to happen. This is a preaching movement. Preaching movement means we have to be in the middle of materialistic people. But at the same time, if we are fixed up, if we are surrendered, if we are surrendered to the holy name, surrendered to Krishna, doing our sadhana properly, doing our services properly, Krishna will definitely give us protection. His holy name will give us protection. So we can go on with our preaching movement and with our sadhana at the same time properly, and taking care of family, taking care of our material life, jobs, etc., relatives. Sometimes we become so fanatic actually that, oh no, this is karmi, that is karmi, I'm not going to go there, I'm not going to do that. Just do that. Look at Vidura's example. He had to play politics. He had to protect Pandavas from all the schemes of Shakuni and Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was a king. Vidura was just a prime minister. Dhritarashtra was a king. Duryodhana was king's son. Still, Vidura would not get swayed from his duties. All of the duties he performed perfectly. That's a very good example for us. So many times we say, no, I'm like, if Prabhuji is trying to be a devotee and Mataji is not, and Mataji is trying to be a devotee, Prabhuji is not, and then there's so many times there's fight at home. Oh, I'm not going to go see your parents, see your family member. They're all karmis. Well, so what? That's what we have to preach to. And preaching is not just by words. Preaching is by setting our example also. Preaching is by our behavior. Preaching is by our dealing with other people, how compassionately we deal with them. That's what the whole platform Prabhupada has given us to preach. So the reason we cannot do that or we don't do that, because we are weak ourselves. So in that moment of weakness or in that life of weakness and devotion service, will always keep us weak. So we have to make ourselves strong. We have to make ourselves powerful. And even in the process, suppose our heart is that, yes, I want to set up a good example and I want to do lots of things in the service of Krishna. Even in the process, I don't want to say the word fall down, even we falter. Even if we make mistakes, Krishna will notice that, take care of that. Prabhupada will notice that. It's okay. I'm not saying making mistakes every time is okay, but once in a while, even in the process, because we are in the preaching movement, and preaching movement is protected by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is very, very magnificent. So the idea is get up again and start preaching. Preaching in all ways, like behavior, taking care, dealings, or how we present ourselves. In every way possible, we should preach. And that's how then we will get the protection also from Krishna, from Prabhupada, from Mahaprabhu. Because this is what they are expecting from us. Now, of course, we can say Vidura wasn't preaching. He wasn't preaching in that sense, but like, look at the purpose. Prabhupada is giving his example. He could not be influenced by the association of his brother. That is preaching. He wasn't sitting down, probably it's not mentioned anywhere, he wasn't sitting down and giving classes on Bhagavad Gita, but that doesn't mean he wasn't preaching. He was preaching by setting an example. That even in the midst of all this politics and attacks on his lives, he was still serving Krishna and trying to protect his devotees. That is devotion service. Dhritarashtra and his materialistic sons wanted to falsely lord it over the world by dint of their own strength. But the devotees, they don't do that. The Lord encouraged them in this. Krishna says, Ye yatham mam prapadyante tasatha bhajamyaham. So they wanted to do that, and it says thus they became more and more bewildered because their desire was like that. But Vidura wanted to achieve devotion, sincere devotion service of the Lord, and therefore became his soul absolutely surrendered to the absolute personality of Godhead. So that was Vidura's heart. That was his desire. So Krishna fulfilled that. He could realize this in the progress of his pilgrim's journey, and thus he was freed from all doubts. So realization of making progress on the path of devotion service, he realized that, how it is said that he was not at all sorry to be bereft of his hearth and home because he now had experienced that dependence on the mercy of the Lord is a greater freedom than the so-called freedom at home. We think by buying a house or by having some financial stability, we can become independent, we can become free. That's not true. Real freedom is by surrendering or by depending upon the mercy of the Lord. But that doesn't mean we don't put on our effort. We always put in our effort, best efforts possible. But still, we depend on the mercy of the Lord. It's very important. That is the real freedom, because we are getting free from our false ego, false sense of enjoyment, false sense of being the controller, proprietor, enjoyer. That is the real freedom. A person should not be in the renounced order of life unless he is firmly convinced of being protected by the Lord. So the renounced order of life, sannyas doesn't mean putting on saffron robes and carrying a danda. That doesn't really mean sannyas. Sannyas actually is internal. Internal means completely convinced that I will be protected by the Lord. Means he has no dependence on anything material. Anything material means no dependence or even aspiration to be protected by my money, my property, by my bodily power, by my relatives, by anything in the world. Only dependent on the mercy of the Lord. That is sannyas. And that can be achieved by being in Krsna ashram also. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, although he was a Grahastha, he had 12 kids, still he was considered as seventh Goswami. That doesn't mean he took sannyas. He never took sannyas. Of course, towards the end of his life, he got this Babaji Vesh, but throughout his life, he remained a Grahastha, but he was as good as a sannyasi, or better than any sannyasi who was wearing saffron robes, but having so many things to depend upon. Tukaram, Sant Tukaram, he was always a Grihastha, but he was completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. So even when he left his body, he didn't leave his body, actually he left. He went to Vaikuntha in the very self-same body. He was still married. He was still Grihastha. But he was a real sannyasi from the core of his heart. He was a sannyasi. Means he was completely dependent on the mercy of Lord. Jayadev Goswami, so many examples are there. That is a real sannyas. So a person should not be in the renounced order of life unless he is firmly convinced of being protected by the Lord. So that conviction is required. And at the same time, it doesn't mean, Prabhupada here, he did not say a man should not be in the renunciation. He said a person, means ladies are also as good as, are great renunciants if they are completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Mirabai, wonderful example. Ganga Mata Goswamini, there's so many. So they are the real sannyasis, or we can say, because they were dependent, completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, because they had full faith in Krishna, in protection of Krishna. And Prabhupada said this stage of life is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Abhyam Sattva Sanshuddhi. Every living entity is factually completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. But unless one is in the pure state of existence, he cannot be established in this position. So factually or truly, in essence, we are completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord, actually. Anything that we do in non-devotional life also. Results are given by Krishna through his energies. But, so we are dependent on energy of Krishna. A devotee understands this energy is energy of Krishna. It's a mercy of Krishna and dependent on. A non-devotee karmi, he is dependent on the energy of the Lord. He thinks he is the doer. That is foolishness. This stage of dependence is called Sattva Sanshuddhi, or purification of one's existence. That's what we have to purify, our consciousness, that I'm not the doer. Karmanye vadikarastu. That's a wonderful shloka in this case. Do not think you are the cause of the result of your activities. But in the material world, this is how the whole material world runs. Even at our company, we can see there are so many charts. The marketing people and the executives and this people, that department, they're all worried about charts. Okay, we are here and this is a growth plan and this is if we do business this way and this is how we are going to grow, this much profit we're going to make and blah, 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 blah. Do they really? No. Ultimately, that all depends upon Krishna. It doesn't mean we don't put in our effort. Yes, we have to do our effort. But a devotee depends on the mercy of Krishna. Karmi depends on the mercy or on his own schemes, on his own strengths, on his own powers. That's the difference. A devotee of the Lord, who's called Narayan Para, is never afraid of anything because he's always aware of the fact that the Lord protects him in all circumstances. Look at Srila Prabhupada. At the age of 69, he left India in a cargo ship, not even by a Boeing or jumbo jet or anything, in a cargo ship. That took him 40 days to come to America. And so much of sickness on the way. And didn't know anybody in America. Personally, he didn't know. So that is Narayan Para. So he was never afraid of anything. Because he's always aware of the fact that the Lord protects him in all circumstances. With this conviction, Vidura traveled alone and he was not seen or recognized by any friend or foe. Why? Because he had grown his beard, he has given up his fancy or opulent clothes, and he was completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. He wasn't going to make arrangements. Oh, okay, so and so, I'm going to come over. Please keep my room ready and give me food to eat, and I'm going to stay for so many days. No, he did not visit any of his friends or family members. He was completely dependent. And thus he enjoyed freedom of life without obligation to the many duties of the world. And that is real renunciation, when we are completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And Krishna will or does and always does make sure that his devotee is protected. And even if one is not a devotee, if it's in his destiny to eat, Krishna will provide. And if it's not in his destiny to eat, he will not eat, even though there could be chapan bhog in front of him. So we are so much worried about what will happen if I become a devotee? What will happen? Krishna will take care of you. You will realize that Krishna is taking care of you. That's what is going to happen. What else can happen? So when we start in the process of devotional service, slowly, we start to realize that yes, Krishna's hands is everywhere. Krishna's eyes are everywhere. Krishna's protection is everywhere. Because wherever we go, there's always wonderful arrangements. Because I have taken shelter of Krishna. But those who are not into this line, they cannot understand it. And they try to make wonderful arrangement for themselves, and still it's a failure many times. And this is Prabhupada said, thus he enjoyed freedom of life without obligation to the many duties of the world. When Lord Shri Krishna was personally present in the mortal world in his eternal blissful form of Shyamsundar, those who were not pure devotees of the Lord could not recognize him or know his glories. So this is what Krishna, one has to be a devotee to understand, to know Krishna, to recognize Krishna. In front of Duryodhan, of course, Dhritarashtra could not see, but he could hear. Krishna was personally present, but still they could not recognize him. Of course, we can say that was a part they were playing in his Leela, yes, but this is the part that we have to understand. If we are not a devotee or not even trying to be a devotee, even if Krishna is standing right in front of us, we won't be able to recognize. We won't. And those who are devotees, Brahma Samhita says, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridesha Vilokyanti. Those who are devotees, those whose eyes are smeared with love of God, they see Krishna everywhere. In everything, they see Krishna. In every situation, they see Krishna's hand. And they're not afraid of anything. They're not dependent on anything else. And they always get protected by Krishna. This is the beauty of devotional service. If we try to protect ourselves from so many problems or issues, how much we can protect? We have limited hands, limited strength, limited intelligence. And if Krishna tries to protect us, who can do anything to us? Who can do any harm to a person who's completely surrendered to Krishna? Nobody. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Kaunteya pratijani name bhakta pranashyati. O Kunti Putra Arjun, please declare it boldly. My devotee never perishes. Name bhakta pranashyati. Never. He will test. That's a different story. He will test our surrender, our renunciation, or our dependence upon him. Test not for himself, not for us, maybe to establish an example in front of the whole society, to establish example in front of everybody. See my devotee, I'll always protect him. He never perishes. And if we look at the examples in the history, in the scriptures, those who have been devotees of demigods, even Brahmaji, Shivji, they died. But those who are devotees of Krishna, they were always protected by Krishna. Always. Ram, Krishna, Narsimha, whichever form of Krishna, that's a different story. Always get protected. He's always bewildering to the non-devotees, but he's always seen by the devotees by dint of the pure devotional service to him. That is Krishna. That is the special characteristics or special prerogatives of his devotees, that only they can see him, only they can serve him, only they are allowed to be near to him. I'm sorry, again, we covered only one verse and the time is getting over. So I'll stop here, see anybody has any questions or comments.
It was very, very, very nice.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Manta.
Prabhuji, please post this background in the group, please. It's very nice.
Okay, okay, Manta. So I guess we can stop here. We all have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri
Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Shri